The Appalachian Mountains aren't just shaped by time. They're a graveyard of secrets, a place where the past never dies. It merely hides beneath dead leaves, inside forgotten caves, and behind the eyes of those who dare to walk their trails after dark. There, every stone holds a memory, every mist carries a whisper, and the stories born in those valleys are not told, they're lived. These aren't fables, they are warnings, because some things don't want to be remembered, but they can't stand to be forgotten. I was never one to believe in legends, especially those told around campfires, filled with exaggerations and forced silences. But after what I saw on Brown Mountain, I'm not sure of anything anymore. Something on that mountain is alive, and I saw its eyes glowing in the dark. It all started one October night, when the mountain air cut like a blade, and the sky looked like a vast, endless black canvas. Two colleagues and I, biologists and seekers of natural phenomena, set out on an expedition to capture images of the famous lights that dance among the valleys. They'd been reported for generations, glowing orbs floating as if they had a will of their own. Some said it was gas, others spirits of murdered natives. Some swore it was alien technology. We wanted answers. We camped near a clearing where sightings were more frequent. The area was surrounded by crooked pine trees, where sound seemed to die before reaching our ears. There was something in the air, a density, an anticipation. But no one spoke of it. We just set up camp, calibrated our gear, and tried to look confident. The first night, nothing. Just the sound of the forest and a cold that felt like it was breaking us from the inside. But on the second night, everything started to change. Around 2 in the morning, I woke up to a sharp crack, like a branch snapping near the tent. I figured it was an animal. But when I stepped out to check, I saw a faint light hovering between the trees, like a flame suspended in midair. I called the others, but by the time they stepped out, the light had vanished. They looked at me with that classic scientific disdain, like I was too suggestible, too tired, or lying. I went back to sleep. But that night I dreamed of a face, burned floating in front of me, and eyes glowing like embers. The next day we found footprints around the camp. Not animal prints, human, but barefoot, and far too deep, like they belonged to something incredibly heavy. On the third night, we decided to climb to a higher point on the mountain. Reports said that from the summit, the lights could be seen moving in groups, like a silent procession. We only brought the essentials: cameras, flashlights, a radio, and just enough courage to face whatever it was. We climbed in silence as if we all knew we were going too far. When we reached the plateau, something hit us immediately. Silence, but it wasn't natural, it was a void. No insects, no rustling leaves, not even the howl of the wind. Just a muffled sound, like we were underwater. Then they appeared. First one, then 2, 3, 5. Lights, glowing orbs suspended in the air, moving with hypnotic slowness. Each pulsed with light, like they were breathing. None of them emitted heat or sound, just presence. They began to approach, and without realizing it, one of us, Thomas, stepped forward. He reached out as if to touch them. That's when I made my first mistake. Instead of pulling him back, I yelled, a sharp, reflexive, instinctive scream. And with that scream, they stopped. The lights froze mid-air for a second, then changed. Their glow turned from white to orange, like fire, like anger. One shot upward and burst silently in the sky. The others slowly backed away until they vanished. We returned in silence, dazed. When we got back to camp, Thomas was sick, vomiting, burning with fever, speaking nonsense. They're underneath, buried, waiting for the light to go out. Then he slept, and dreamed, and screamed in his sleep, but wouldn't wake up. The next morning, Thomas still hadn't woken. His body trembled as if frozen from within, pale skin, purple lips. We tried calling on the radio, but nothing, no signal. It was like we were alone in the world. We decided to descend the mountain. We carried Thomas on a makeshift stretcher. Every step felt heavy, as if the forest itself didn't want us to leave. And it was there, at the start of the trail, that the forest finally revealed itself. The air grew thick, murky. The fog swallowed us whole. I called for my colleague Jordan, but got no response. Only an echo, distorted, repeating my name, but not in my voice. The lights appeared again, but now they were everywhere, surrounding us, moving in circles, approaching slowly, like predators, like something that had waited centuries for us. And then Thomas opened his eyes, but they weren't his eyes anymore. They glowed with the same light as the orbs, no pupils, no soul. He stood up without help, as if pulled by invisible strings, and he smiled, a crooked, forced smile, like skin learning the gesture for the first time. "They want you," he said in a voice that blended his own with something deeper, older. I ran. I abandoned everything. Backpack, radio, courage. My steps stumbled over stones and roots. The forest screamed without sound. And behind me, I heard the most absurd sound of my life. Metallic laughter, as if the mountain itself was enjoying my fear. I don't remember how I got out. I woke up in a rural hospital 3 days later. They said they found me in an abandoned barn covered in dried blood and dirt. Jordan and Thomas? Never found. No footprints, no trace, nothing. But sometimes, when I'm alone at home, I see a small light floating in the corner of my room, and I hear that whisper, that metallic laugh, like the lights are still following me, like they're waiting for me to sleep, so they can come back in. These days I avoid high places. I avoid the dark. I avoid mirrors, because sometimes when I look too deeply, I see reflections that aren't mine. Authorities claim the brown mountain lights are just natural anomalies, swamp gas, atmospheric mirages, but no scientific explanation can silence the screams I still hear on October nights, or the emptiness in the eyes of those who return from there, if anyone ever really does. Because sometimes the light doesn't want to be watched. It wants in, to inhabit, to take, and maybe I'm not exactly who I used to be anymore. So if you ever decide to climb that mountain, bring flashlights, sure, but more importantly, bring strength to look into the abyss and not lose yourself in it. And remember, not everything that shines wants to be discovered.
If you liked this story, click the link below and uncover even deeper horrors in our exclusive ebook. Now tell me, have you ever seen a light in the sky you couldn't explain? Leave a comment below. Your story might be the next one.
I've always driven at night. The road calms me. The constant sound of the tires on the asphalt, the silence around me, the stars hidden behind heavy clouds. But that night, something felt wrong from the start. I was returning from a work trip through rural North Carolina, cutting through the mountains on a secondary road that barely anyone uses. An old road full of sharp turns, steep hills, and absolutely no cell service. One of those routes where your GPS warns you're on your own. Around 3 in the morning, I saw something on the shoulder. A woman, alone, motionless, dressed in white. I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a post, a scarecrow, or just visual exhaustion. But as I got closer, it became clear. She was real. A young woman, pale, dark hair, long, falling like a sad waterfall, and the dress. It was old, like she had stepped out of a sepia photograph. I stopped the car on impulse. I rolled down the window and asked if she was okay. She just nodded and asked for a ride in a voice so faint it sounded like a lament. I didn't hesitate. I opened the door and she got in. I sat back at the wheel and we drove off. During the first few minutes, I tried to make conversation. I asked if she needed help where she was going, if she wanted me to call someone. No answer. Just the soft sound of rain on the windshield and her slow breathing behind me. I looked in the rearview mirror. She was there, but her eyes were fixed on the window as if she saw something I couldn't. Then, the temperature started to drop. The car's windows fogged up. The dashboard display flickered, and that's when I noticed the back seat hand was soaked, like someone had just come out of a lake. I slammed on the brakes, startled. I turned around, She was no longer there, nothing, no sound, no sign of a door opening, just the seat still wet, and a single white rose where she had sat. I tried to convince myself it wasn't real, that it was fatigue, stress, maybe a dream, but the cold remained, and the rose on the seat was now bleeding. A dark, thick liquid oozed from the petals, and the smell, it wasn't perfume. It was wet earth and dead flesh. I accelerated. I wanted to get out of there, find a town, a gas station, any sign of human life that could save me from this madness. But the road seemed endless. I looked at the GPS, and it was frozen, always reading 1 kilometers to destination. But that kilometer never got any shorter. Then I looked in the rearview mirror again, as in she was there. Again, sitting in the same spot, her head slightly tilted as if listening to a song only she could hear. Her skin now even paler, almost translucent, and her eyes, they didn't blink, didn't move. I screamed, told her to get out, but she didn't move. I started praying, something I hadn't done since I was a kid. Each word scraped from my throat, but it seemed like the more I prayed, the more she smiled. Yes, a smile formed, slow, twisted, like her very skin was tearing to create the expression. And then she spoke, with a voice that didn't come from her throat, but from the air around us. "You took me to the altar, and then let me die." I didn't understand. I didn't know that woman. I'd never been engaged, but something inside me remembered. Images began to invade my mind. An accident, an overturned car, rain, a woman trapped in the passenger seat, and me, running, abandoning her to drown in the river that flooded the road. But that couldn't have happened, not to me. And yet, I knew it was true. The car lost control, the steering locked, the speed climbed on its own. The dashboard blinked with red numbers, as if the vehicle was possessed. The road ahead now twisted, as if it were alive, a liquid nightmare, infinite without logic. And then she leaned over my shoulder. I felt the icy touch of wet hair brushing against me, and she whispered with the voice of 1,000 open graves, "Now you'll take me all the way." I woke up inside the car. It was parked on the shoulder, the engine off, everything silent. There were no signs of an accident, no sign of her, just the white rose, now dry, resting in my lap. And on the inside of the windshield, written in something dark like soot, was a sentence. "You finally arrived." No one believed what I said afterward. They claimed I fell asleep at the wheel, that I hallucinated, that it was stress. But every night, at the same time, I get a call on my cell phone. Unknown number. No one speaks, just the sound of rain, and a whisper, almost imperceptible, repeating the same question. "Are you going to leave me again?" Since that night, I avoid deserted roads. I avoid looking in the rearview mirror. I avoid driving at night. But sometimes, she comes anyway. And every time I pass that curve, where the road seems to disappear for just a second, I feel the back seat sink, like someone very light just sat down. Have you ever felt the forest breathe? I'm not talking about wind, I mean something deeper, something that watches, that waits, that moves when you're not looking. I felt it. I lived it. And to this day, I don't know if I ever truly came back from there. It was November when I decided to hike a remote section of the Appalachian Trail. A personal project alone, to reconnect with something I couldn't quite name. 3 days of trekking through valleys, forgotten caves, and thick, ancient woods. Just me, my backpack, and the silence of the mountains. The first night was peaceful. I camped near a stream and fell asleep under a clear sky full of stars. But just before I dozed off, I heard something strange. A whistle coming from across the water, rhythmic, steady, like someone trying to get my attention. I figured it was another hiker. I called out, asking if they needed help. The whistle immediately stopped, and the silence that followed was so dense, so absolute, it felt like pressure on my chest. Something told me that in this place, sound had weight, consequences. The next morning, I found strange marks around my tent, like footprints, but massive. and not really shaped like anything human or animal. Just deep impressions, as if something heavy had walked in a circle around me while I slept. I kept moving, trying to ignore the discomfort, but the forest was no longer the same. The birds had gone quiet, the insects silent. All of nature seemed to be holding its breath, waiting. By the second day, the weather had turned. The sky darkened faster than expected, and fog crept through the trees. The trail began to vanish beneath the mist. That's when I found the old sign, half buried in moss, barely legible. Never scream in Hollow Ridge Valley after sunset. I thought it was a joke, a bit of backwoods folklore. I snapped a photo, laughed to myself, and moved on. But that night, everything changed. Night fell fast, too fast, like the sun had just given up on that place. I set up camp in a natural clearing surrounded by twisted pine trees. The mist slithered across the ground like cold snakes. And then, the sounds began. A sharp crack, then another. And then footsteps, not fast, not slow, just steady, like someone or something circling my tent. I grabbed my flashlight, jumped out and shouted, "Who's there?" And with that scream, I sealed my fate. For a moment, all was silent, utterly silent. And then came the most terrifying sound I've ever heard. The sound of the forest pulling away. Yes, the trees themselves seemed to recoil. Branches snapped like breaking bones, leaves shriveled in midair, as if something larger had descended among them. My flashlight flickered. The air grew thick. My mouth tasted like metal, and my eyes burned like they were full of sand. But there was no wind, and then I saw it. A figure. It had no form. It was shadow, dense and absolute, like someone had cut out a piece of the night and placed it right there in front of me. It didn't walk. It glided, surrounded me. But what terrified me most wasn't the sight. It was the sound. It was mimicking my voice, whispering my name back at me, repeating the exact same scream I had just let out, but distorted, like a beast trying to imitate human speech. Every time it said my name, something inside me trembled, like it was trying to pull me out of myself. I ran. Through the forest blindly. The trees twisted around me, the path was gone, the forest swallowed me, and behind me it followed. No rush, because it knew I had no way out. I don't know how long I ran. Hours, maybe minutes. Time dissolved. My watch had stopped. The compass spun wildly. My flashlight finally died. And I was alone in the dark. But not quite. It was still there. Not with footsteps, with presence. I could feel the cold absence of it. An absence so complete it burned. It was like standing near a black hole where reality bent. And you felt yourself being pulled into a place where time and identity don't exist. Then the voices began. But not ordinary voices. My own. Echoes of memories I'd never spoken aloud. Phrases from my childhood, my first fear, the last lie I told. The shadow was feeding on me, knowing me, becoming me. I tripped, rolled down a steep slope and landed face first in front of a stone opening, a cave wide as a giant's mouth. I didn't want to enter, but the sound behind me gave me no choice. It wasn't a roar, not a whisper. It was the sound of emptiness. And it was worse than anything else. Inside, the darkness was alive. Feeling along the walls, I found carvings, old symbols, scratches like claws, and bones, so many bones, animal, human, and some I couldn't even identify. At the back of the cave was a stone, an altar, and on it, something pulsed, like a heart made of black mist. The shadow took full shape there. It expanded, filling the cave. It had eyes, many eyes, but none where they should be, and all of them were mine. And then it spoke, not with words, with images. It showed me who I would have been if I had never come. Showed me everything I left behind. Showed me the price. And then it offered me a deal. You can go back, but leave something of yourself behind. I agreed, but to this day, I don't know what I left. They say I survived, that I was found days later wandering a road miles from where I'd entered. No injuries, no physical trauma. But my eyes, they said my eyes were different. He looks like someone who's seen what shouldn't be seen. Since then, I left everything. My job, my city, my name. I became someone else, or maybe just what was left of me. But every night at 3:33 a.m., I wake up with the feeling I'm back in that cave, and every time I look in the mirror, it takes just a second too long for my eyes to follow me. If you go to the mountains, respect the old rules. Never scream in the valley. Never follow the trail after sunset. And above all, never ever look into the shadow if it calls your name.
If you liked this story, click the link below and uncover even deeper horrors in our exclusive ebook. And now tell me, could you walk that trail alone at night after all this? Drop a comment below. Your courage might be the next target.
3 stories, 3 legends, 3 encounters with the unexplainable, the lights that float like eyes across the valleys, waiting for the next curious soul to consume, the pale bride who refuses to be forgotten and wanders the roads, searching for the one who left her behind, and the ancient shadow that lives among the trees that knows our sins and demands payment in silence. You can try to forget, say they're just myths, hallucinations of lost travelers, campfire lies, but anyone who's heard the forest whisper knows better. The Appalachian Mountains aren't just old, they are alive, and they remember. And they keep everything we've dropped in them, screams, broken promises, and pieces of the souls who dared to walk their dark paths. So before you go to sleep tonight, ask yourself, how many of these stories are just legends? And how many are waiting for you to become real? If you enjoyed these stories, click the link below and uncover even deeper horrors in our exclusive ebook. Now tell me, which of these legends do you think is true? Or worse, which one have you already lived?